Hello everybody and welcome along to, we call it the latest edition of the Rebel Wild Boar, where we're going to look at what's ahead of us, if you like, for the coming weekend. And of course the big story is the big one from a Cork point of view is the All-Ireland Camogie finals, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later on. 3 finals in Croke Park, and Cork have an interest in not one, not two, but in all 3. Then it's round 2 of the various hurling championships in Cork. The Cork County Board organised competitions, 5 in all. We'll have a bit of a look at maybe news from the appointment section of what happened in terms of inter-county management during the week, and a look at ladies football and what an incredible night last night was for the Cork minor team winning the All-Ireland, the start of the Premier League, and a couple of more things that might entertain us before we get through all of this. Anyway, we're going to start with the this is the second round now of the various Cork championships, and of course this is, if you like, it's kind of moving week, because teams that any team that lost last week would, if they're serious about the championship, would want to be thinking about winning. Well, they're probably always thinking about winning, but want to win this week. Any team that won, if you wish, they can afford a bit of a down week, maybe 4 points to get them through, maybe 3 in some cases, but that's not the way they approach it, because in terms of scoring differences and all that, every team goes to the very end of these matches. So to start with the Premier Senior Hurling, the 2 games that we've got on Saturday at 5 o'clock for a start, Middleton and Newtown Shannon and Páirc Uí Rinn, and Douglas and Kanturk in Mallow. I'd imagine that Middleton would be back with a vengeance after their disappointing defeat last week at the hands of Douglas, so I'd expect them to have too much over Newtown Shandon, who were happy with their performance, obviously beating Kanturk by 4 points, but still I think Middleton will win that one. Douglas, who have all their main players available to them, they don't seem to be troubled by injury. I know Cadigan went off last week. It's Douglas' second team, I think, that'll be affected by some of the problems that beset their footballers a couple of weeks ago, but without any shadow of doubt, Douglas would be it would be a major surprise if they can get over Kanturk. By the way, in the Premier Senior Hurling last week, for those of you who are into the making money from gambling, now there's the odds in these teams, or the odds are there's no major differences in terms of huge favourites or anything like that, but the underdogs, I'm told, I believe won all of the 6 games in the Premier Senior Hurling. The underdogs, according to the bookies, that is. The second group, we have Glen Rovers playing Bishopstown, and you'd have to fancy Glen Rovers there, but Bishopstown would be absolutely thrilled with their big win over Na Piarsaigh. They haven't been winning games at either hurling and football, so that's a welcome game for them. They're playing at the 1 o'clock game on Sunday and the 3 o'clock game on Sunday. Páirc Uí Rinn, Erin's Own versus Na Piarsaigh, and Erin's Own really buoyed up, and they're still, I noticed an awful lot of they have a sizable number, the Murphy brothers and Shabo and those fellas, from a team that were successful in the past. Maybe it'll take a while before some of the younger players will come up with, but they will be happy about that one. But Na Piarsaigh, they've no choice here, only get out and win this one, or they could be facing out the gap. The next group then, SARS, will be expected to get over Charleville. Both games on Saturday evening, one in Mallow and the other in Páirc Uí Rinn, Blackrock playing the Bears. This is interesting because Bears drew last week with Charleville. Blackrock were delighted with their victory over SARS. SARS probably should have won it, missed a penalty, I believe, which had put them 6 up. But Blackrock weren't county champions a couple of years ago for nothing, so that's going to be a really interesting one. And the Bears would, I suppose, look, the Cahalan brothers, will be talking a little bit about them maybe later on. 2 of them were out last week, so hopefully from their point of view that they'll be back. In the Scenery Hurling Championship, as you'd expect, an incredible championship again, and Newcestown will take on Fermoy. First of all, in that game is going on in Ballincollig, and both of them won last week. Fermoy have had a great start in terms of winning their first hurling match and first football match. I think Newcestown will be, on a bit of a high after their win, so I kind of give them the nod in that one. And Mallow should defeat Clyne. Clyne would be one of the teams that, to be honest, would struggle at this grade, I think. They stood up last year courtesy of a win over Mallow in the last day of the season. The next group then is the most competitive group of, I would say, in all the championships in Cork. And the 2 teams that won last week will play each other. Father O'Neill's, who had a big win, surprising win over, but not surprising win, but the margin of the victory, will place Horsey Rovers in Ovens on Sunday at 2 o'clock. And at Saturday at 5 o'clock you have Blarney playing Killa, and this is out the gap time for both of these teams. Killa would be disappointed not to build maybe on last year, but they still have an opportunity, whereas Blarney, with all those young players, will be expected to toe the line here, or they could be, their championship aspirations could be finished. Carricktool and Ballymartle, these are two teams now that lost, so no choice here. I kind of give a tentative vote, if you like, to Carricktool. I was very surprised at the scoreline from the Ballymartle-Ballyhea game. I thought the Ballyhea might struggle in that one, but they won it well, and they take on Bride Rovers in Kildare. First game is at Saturday 2, the second game Sunday 2. I would think the Bride Rovers would be the fancy team there. Then moving on to the Premier Intermediate again. We talk about what an incredible championship this is. Castlelyons, Watergrass Hill, a local derby. Watergrass Hill losing last week. Not losing, they drew there, my apologies. Castlelyne had, I think, a 4 or 5 point win over Carrigaline. Like Carrigaline, I think they're always one good performance away maybe from becoming county champions. They do well maybe a better way to put it is they don't do well in one match. They catches them out. Carrigaline would play Aero kind of up at this grade. The draw last week, but I'd expect Carrigaline to beat them in Ballinasig that game Saturday evening at 7 o'clock, whereas Castlelyne and Watergrass Hill and McCormack on Friday, as they tell me, that's a real local derby. Then the next two matches in this group, you have Bandon playing in Escara in Clodove. Both of them winning last week. In Escara probably, I think would be the slightly better side. But Bandon, when they were relegated last year, fair play to them. They got a big performance out of their team in the second half last week against Valley Rovers. And mentioning Valley Rovers, they go to Carlag on Friday evening to save their season, save their championship when they take on Youghal, who are in the very, very same boat. So that should be an interesting tussle. Look, I can't say no huge amount about Youghal, but judging by the way they were beaten, I would imagine that Valley Rovers would be the slight favourites in that one. Then moving on to the Intermediate A Hurling Championship, and there's no doubt that this is a seriously good championship as well, and the teams ahead, remember they were relegated last year, they'd be delighted the fact that they got over Middleton, so they take on Blackrock, and Blackrock's second team, who were only just beaten by, they scored 215, they would be well beaten by Lisgould. So I'd expect they had to win that one, and I'd expect Lisgould and Middleton, even though this is Middleton's second team, they'd have players that would have won a serious amount at underage level. So those two games are on Sunday 2 o'clock. By the way, any game Sunday, as I said, Sunday 2 on Sunday, most of them being moved to 2 o'clock. There's one at 3 and one at 4, to enable people to watch the camogie. And I think that all matches should have gone maybe to 2 o'clock at the very latest to facilitate. This is a great occasion for the camogie team. But anyway, the other decisions that have been made. The next two matches here, Clodove and Dungourney, both of them winning last week. I give a slight vote there to Clodove, and I expect they have all to get over Douglas. And this Douglas team obviously is suffering from, they got beating last week. They'll probably have some of the players that were missing, that we saw that were missing from their Premier Senior football team. And finally, the final two matches here, you've Sash taking on Melan, who were well beaten last week. By Kildare will struggle here again, I would imagine. And Kildare and Mayfield, as I said, beaten by Sash, will be hoping to get their season off. But Kildare were impressive, it must be said, albeit maybe that the opposition wasn't great last week. And finally, in the Premier Junior Hurling, these are the real lucky guys, in that I told you about them, that they were all facing eviction, if you wish, but they survived, and this is now a championship that's enshrined in the Cork County Board competitions. And last week we had great games in it, and no doubt the 6 games this week will be likewise. We first of all have on Saturday at 3 o'clock Barry Rowe taking on Milford. Milford beaten last week by a good Kilbrittain side who will be one of the favourites here. And Barry Rowe, who had a great draw, a fabulous match with St Finbarrs, lucky enough to be at that one. So I expect maybe the Bears and Milford be the defining game there. I give Milford the nod. Or Barry Rowe friends mightn't be too pleased about that, and I expect Kilbrittain to beat the Bears, because I would imagine that maybe Billy O'Connell and one or two others might move off that Bears team onto the Premier Senior team. Next 2 matches in Group 2, we have Bellygavin playing Ballygiblin. Ballygiblin, County Junior champions last week. What a way to start. A big win over Dripsy. I would imagine this will be a good match between themselves, the Bellygavin. I give Ballygiblin the vote, and I'd expect Arradine Rangers to be too good for Dripsy, and that's the game that's going on Sunday at 4 o'clock. Pity, but that's the way it is. Then we have Glen Rovers and Russell Rovers. Russell Rovers winning last week in St Catherine's and Tracton beating Glen Rovers, so it's a big game for Glen Rovers. Remember, they were relegated. I don't think they'll be relegated again though, but Russell Rovers might get the nod there, and Tracton just might be that little bit ahead of St Catherine's in their match. We'll talk a little bit about inter-county appointments, and there are still managers packing the job good. Anthony Cunningham from Roscommon, I'm not sure where he's going, but during the week the Cork County Board ratified Pat Ryan's selectors, and as expected, it was the guys that were with him, like Fergal Condon from the Had Club, who had a big success with him, O'Kelly, and Don Lomani from Bishopstown Cork under 20 coach, and there's a vacancy there now because of his elevation to this. And Don would also be known as his deputy principal in Christians, doing a lot of work in promoting hurling up there. Brendan Coleman from Yaw was another from Pat Ryan's under 20, under 21 management team, as was Wayne Sherlock from Blackrock. A bit surprised. Well, no, I shouldn't be surprised because I don't know enough about it, but I must confess I haven't heard of the team coach before, and they've gone outside, if you like, in terms of, this is a Waterford man, but Don LaRoque did play for the Sarts, and he was involved with the Galway Camogie team last year, who were the All-Ireland Camogie champions. John Cleary's selectors have yet to be ratified. Seemingly that will be done at the next county board meeting, and for those of you that follow that story, I would imagine that there'll be a number of, he became the interim manager because that Keith Rickman stepped down, and the selectors were the same selectors. Obviously now, whether there's going to be a different set of selectors, people will be interested in that, and I would expect that there would be 1 or 2 changes. I suppose a bit of a surprise that for some people that we're already after meeting county final time in Carlow on Sunday. St Mullins' play Banglestown Gale in the county hurling final, and likewise in Kerry. That game, the Kerry game between Ballyduff, will be the favourites against Causeway. And I know now there's a bit of talk about the way they do things in Kerry. They play the hurling championship before the football starts. It's a different system. I don't think that's really, and they do their business, and that's the way they do it. But in terms of the real dual scenarios, the way it's Cork do it, I think is the best way. But anyway, that's not for us to be making huge proclamations about that one. But if you think the Kerry County Championship, I believe it's on TG Carr. It's going to be live streamed by the Examiner. Obviously, it'll be covered by Kerry Radio, I would imagine, and the Kerry Senior Football Championship, or the Kerry Football Championship, starts this weekend. And I don't know whether Radio 1 are going to be covering these county matches, but it's a big boost for the Kerry Senior Hurling final, and maybe it is the right time. Maybe it is the right time to play it. Anyway, so the big story of the weekend from a Cork point of view is the All-Ireland Camogie final, now sponsored by Glendimplex, and this is a real chance for Cork to stamp their authority on the world of Camogie. They're already All-Ireland under 16 and minor champions, and they have 2 teams involved on Sunday. At 2 o'clock, Cork playing Galway in the intermediate final, and this is a big game obviously for all involved here. And looking through this Cork team, they're a settled side. Now it's Galway's second team as well, and probably they are maybe settled, but I think the Cork team is has been there for quite a while, and a number of those players, like our seasoned series operators, and for Fiona Neville, she's the team captain for St. Catherine's. I would be hoping really, and I'd expect that she'll be raising the Jack McGrath Cup in the air on Sunday after that game. The first game though in Croke Park is the Premier Junior, and I think that's on at 11:45 and 12 o'clock between Antrim and Armagh. Normally, we might say we mightn't be hugely interested in this, but obviously we do know, because Jennifer O'Leary, as she was back then, from Barryroe, who was an incredible camogie player, probably one of the best, definitely one of the best ever to come out of West Cork, and one of the leading camogie players in the country. She won 4 All-Irelands with Cork, 8 All-Stars, with an outstanding servant to her club. And then when she got married, she moved to Armagh, and obviously she continued to play camogie up there. She's now Jennifer Curry, but she came out of retirement. Her last game for Cork, I think, was in 2014, and she's going to be lining out on Sunday for Armagh against Antrim. Now Antrim, I think you'd have to expect would be the favourites in that match. Like Antrim, if the hurling, if the camogie matches the hurling, I'd expect Antrim. But she came out of retirement, and then in the semi-final against Cavan, she got a goal and 3 points, and she'd play inside in the full forward line. And whatever Cork people will be in the stadium, I'd imagine they'll be supporting Armagh. It's a great story. She was an outstanding athlete, as I said, from the famed Barryroe club. But the big one is the senior game at 4:15 between Cork and Kilkilly. And even though the Cork haven't been setting the world alight, they were disappointed last week to lose. They weren't that impressive in the All-Ireland semi-final against Waterford. It took Aisling Thompson to come on. But you know what, I just thought about it. There was 2 incidents last year. We had the situation with Orla Cronin, who was suspended, and the stay of execution was lifted. I'm not too sure actually, did I mention that before started or not? And then the last day we had Aisling Thompson, who was cleared in the morning of the match. Now how she was cleared and the circumstances that led to that, that's, we'll say, another story. But I think the Cork team now is going to be really settled. First of all, that's one thing. There's no discipline issues or hanging over them, and also the dual players, because they've had a few dual players, and that just introduces its own dynamic into it. So even though that maybe Cork haven't been impressive, I think this is their opportunity to win their 29th All-Ireland. It's a long time in camogie terms from Cork since their last win in 2018, which I think they defeated Kilkenny on that one. A new goalie, Amy Lee from the Piershig, and she's also the team captain. And of course, we were talking about earlier on about Jennifer O'Leary. Well, the most westerly, definitely, I would think, camogie player Libby Coppinger from Kilkeel plays with St. Colum's Club. Like, she's one of their outstanding fullbacks and was brilliant the last day. And of course, in the other corner, back in defence there, we've Maeve Cahalane. And we'll be talking about the Cahalanes a bit in a minute, in that her sister Orla, who's on the Cork Cork ladies football team that won the minor All-Ireland last year. There's a huge chance that she's going to come on in that game, and like what an incredible time it is for the Cahalans. There's 6 in the family, and I don't know whose idea it was that they shouldn't have more than 6 children, when you consider like what these athletes have done. Like Damien Cahalane, Conor Cahalane are well known in terms of their exploit for Castlehaven football, Bars hurling, Cork Senior hurling. Jack Cahalane is the dual player for both. And then the 3 sisters, I think Grania is the only one. She does play, but doesn't play inter-county hurling or camogie. They play their camogie, I think, with St. Finbars, and 2 of them at least play ladies football with Éire. I was just thinking that if the Cahalanes were kept at home for a year, there'd probably no need for climate change bills in this country. The amount of mileage that this family cover, incredible, and a great family. And we wish them, every one of them, the best to look in that camogie team. But anyway, the half-back line has been a real linchpin, I think, for this camogie team. And the occupants can change. Aisling Thompson now dropped back and Hannah Looney come in, but you've Laura Hayes from St. Catherine's, Laura Tracy from Killa, and Saoirse McCarthy from Corsi Rovers, who was player of the match last day. Like, I suppose, look, anybody that follows Camogie or hurling will know what halfbacks are about. And Aisling Thompson, you know, is the real go-to girl in this team. Is a veteran of many a Cork campaign. And I suppose the inside forward line then, you've got Amy O'Connor, who was the real scoring star from St. Vincent, Chloe Sigerson from Killa, and Katrina Mackey from Douglas. They're the three inside, and you've got Fiona Keating, kind of the centre forward there. So it's, you know, like, I mean, can you imagine if they could win both of them? Like, you'd have the under 16, the minor, the intermediate. But maybe we're asking too much, even though I do think that it's a huge possibility, and it would make a great occasion for all those that promote Camogie around the country. The team manager, Matt Toomey, and of course David Fitzgerald is involved with them. So I do think that it will be, I think it's going to be a great day for them. It'll be interesting, the figures as well. I mean, the ladies football last week, 491,000 watching TG Cahir. The Camogie, I think, is going to be on Network 2, and it will be covered on local radio as well, obviously. So the very best wishes to everybody involved, and you know, like, it's going to, I suppose the more profile, should goes without saying, the more publicity and the more profile it gets, the very best for the game. Anyway, ladies football, and whereas it hasn't been a great year for Cork in terms of, you know, the senior team losing that quarter final, my God, there must be some regret at that now, and the under 14s and under 16s lost finals. But last night they defeated Galway 118-108 in the minor final, and the last time that this competition was played was back in 2019 when Cork beat Monaghan, and a certain John Cleary, who is an uncle of the Cahillans, was the team manager. And but last night the man standing in the middle with the Banish Dorsby was Joe Carroll. Those of you who will follow Gaelic football will know him from his times with Rockchapel, great servant of Macroom GA Club, and now with ladies football. So it was a great win for his team last night. And like, there was one stage when Galway got back into it. It's a close enough game, the scoreline mightn't suggest that, but the thing I notice about this ladies football team is that, okay, they're well scattered, but the amount of these Cork clubs that are coming to the fore here, you know, you've like clubs like Glanmire, Bright Rovers, Erin's Own, Clyne, Ada, I'm probably missing a few now. I think that's a big development in terms of the difference between itself and Gaelic football, and maybe there's a lesson down there that it just shows, doesn't it, that somebody that has interest in these clubs is driving them on. So the star player last night in terms of scoring was Abigail Ring from Clyne. A Ring from Clyne, the star player in a Cork football team. She got 1-6. Just think about that. Orla Cahalan, I mentioned her earlier. She got 3 points. Emma Hurley from Moylan Rovers deep in West Cork. Saif McGoldrick, who was centre back, and Lee Hallahan from Bright Rovers also scored 2 points each. So it was a huge win for them, and you know, well done to everybody concerned with that particular team. A number of the players actually on it also won Camogie medals. There in the All Ireland Under 18 Camogie, that game was played back in March. I think there was actually 7 of them. There was Aoife Barrett, who was playing cornerback last night. There was Millie Conner from Ballinascarty, an absolutely outstanding player. And then we've got Aoife Healy, again one of those Clyne players we mentioned earlier on. One of the scorers, Leah Hallahan, Orla Cahalan was mentioned, and then 2 other players. We've Ciara Morrison from Bright Rovers and Adele Sheehan from Éire Óg. And so well, as I said, well done. And you know, I think that the Cork ladies football team, maybe there's no infusion of talent needed there. But you know that winning minors always it doesn't happen automatically, but it's a very good start, shall we say. So it's Premier League time for those of you that are waiting for your fix for that to come along and entertain you. Well, it starts this weekend on Friday night. I think it's Crystal Palace taking on Oh, they take it. God, how would I forget? Arsenal fans would be really impressed with me not remembering that it was them. And then on Saturday you have a whole host of games. Fulham, Liverpool will travel to take them on, and of course massive Liverpool following. Wolves playing Leeds. Leeds just kind of surviving last year towards the end of the season, and there's always interest in sports. They take on Southampton. And Nottingham Forest, the new team and the block, they travel to Newcastle. Manchester United, Eric Ten Hag, well, he gets his opportunity against West Brom. Surely to God Almighty they'll beat them. The League of Ireland, we had the FAI Cup last week, and Cork City winning that one against Cove, and there was a bit of, I won't say controversy, bit of a problem in that game, but thankfully the security system and the fencing, it's built to collapse if there's a bit of a problem. There was a bit of a problem, but thankfully they got over that. Cork City, for their troubles though, they won that game 1-0, and they must now play Derry away, and that's probably the worst possible draw, if you like. But this weekend both teams are back in league action, with Cork City playing at Lone, who are at the bottom of it, and then we have the game Cove Ramblers, who, despite being beaten last week, they won their last league game before that, and they are travelling to Longford, and they'll be hoping to get whatever their campaign off to a winning start. So that's about it. Oh yeah, we want to say well done to Con Caller from Ballinhassig, who's been appointed the head coach of the Irish Wheelchairs Senior Men's Basketball team. That's a great honour for him, and his son Conor obviously plays in that team. And John Murphy, the golfer who had a great tournament in the Irish Challenge, which is part of the Challenge Tour, and where the top 20 players will get into the DP World Tour. Well, after his third place finish last week in the K Club, I think he's now 47th, and he's teeing off at 12:25, I think, today in the Finnish Open. We wish him all the best. So until the next time, take care and mind yourself.